"Your family doesn't deserve you," Joanne said quietly, her hand still on the fence between our yards. I looked at her, then at the dinner dishes cooling behind my window. I smiled, not out of denial, but recognition. "Maybe not," I said softly, "but they're still mine. If you're listening, subscribe and tell me where you're from." My name is Margaret Rowland, but most people in town call me Maggie. I'm 68 years old, and I've lived in the same weathered blue house on Ashbury Street for almost 40 years. From my kitchen window, I can see the Atlantic, a thin silver line that catches the sunrise and makes every morning feel like a second chance. My husband, Thomas, built this home piece by piece before he passed away 18 years ago. He wasn't a rich man, but he believed in steady work and leaving things better than you found them. I've tried to live by that ever since. I worked as a librarian at the local branch until retirement, a job I loved for its order and quiet. Books never shouted, never lied, and always told you exactly what they were worth, something people don't always do. After Thomas died, the house became my anchor. Every board, every squeaky step, carried his touch. The porch swing he built still creaks when the wind moves through it, like it remembers laughter that used to fill this yard. My daughter Lena lives 2 towns over, in Portland. She's successful, sharp, and endlessly busy, the kind of woman who keeps her calendar more organized than her heart. My son Paul still lives nearby, just 15 minutes away, with his wife Dana and their little boy Henry. He's kind-hearted but timid, easily swayed, especially when it comes to keeping peace in his marriage. Dana is polite but guarded around me, the kind of person who treats kindness like a transaction, never giving more than she expects to get back. I don't say much about it, not even to my neighbor Joanne Miller, who's known me since. Lena and Paul were in grade school. Joanne has the kind of eyes that see too much. She lost her husband a decade ago and has 2 grown sons who actually call her. She brings me muffins every Sunday and insists on trimming my hedges when I'm not looking. Her company has become one of the small blessings of my later years. Still, there are moments when the house feels too big for one person. Family visits used to fill the silence, birthdays, holidays, even random Saturdays when Henry wanted to help Grandma garden. But lately, the visits have grown shorter, the phone calls quicker. Lena cancels dinners because of work emergencies. Paul drops by only when Dana needs a sitter. When they do come, I notice their eyes wander to the dated wallpaper, to the faded curtains, to the old wooden clock that ticks too loudly in the quiet. I know what they see, a house frozen in another time. But to me, it's not old, it's honest. Every mark on these walls tells a story. The pencil lines tracking Lena's height, the chipped paint from when Paul learned to throw a baseball indoors. You don't erase history just because it's gone out of style. Sometimes I wonder if my family understands what this house means. Thomas used to say, "Respect isn't about obedience, Maggie. It's about gratitude." I repeated that to the kids growing up, hoping it would take root. But life moved too fast for lessons that patient. Now, I find myself repeating it under my breath when silence fills the room after they leave. Joanne once told me that families change after a death, that grief rearranges loyalty in quiet, unfair ways. Maybe she's right, but I've always believed that love doesn't stop just because the people you gave it to forget how to hold it. I still cook when they visit, still save small things for them. Lena's favorite tea, Paul's old fishing rod, Henry's toy truck. Little gestures that mean, you still belong here. The last time they all came together was for my mortgage celebration dinner, something simple I'd been planning for months. I didn't expect gifts or speeches. I just wanted them around the table one more time, laughing the way we used to. But that evening turned out to be something else entirely. A quiet unraveling I didn't see coming, and the start of the truth Joanne would later name out loud. That evening started with good intentions, as most disappointments do. I'd spent the entire morning preparing roasting a chicken the way Thomas used to like it, baking Lena's favorite lemon pie, setting the old dining table with the china I only brought out for special occasions. I even polished the silverware, though I knew no one would notice. The house smelled like rosemary and butter, and for a moment, it almost felt like old times. Paul arrived first, balancing Henry on one arm and a box of store-bought rolls in the other. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice distracted. "Dana's parking. She'll be right in." Henry wiggled out of his arms and ran straight to me. "Grandma, can I play with the trains?" he asked. I smiled and nodded, grateful for one pure moment before the adults filled the room with their noise. Dana followed, carrying a bouquet of supermarket flowers, the kind wrapped in too much plastic. "Congratulations, Margaret," she said, handing them to me. "I can't imagine paying off a house like this." There was a trace of something in her tone, not admiration, not quite disbelief either, just distance. I thanked her and placed the flowers in a vase. Lena showed up nearly an hour late, heels clicking against the wood floors, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, tell him to move the meeting," she said into the receiver. "I'll call back later." Then, without looking at me, she hung up and said, "Traffic was awful." I smiled anyway, because that's what mothers do. Dinner began politely enough. I carved the chicken, poured wine, asked about their work, their lives. Paul mumbled something about projects. Lena talked about new clients. Dana mentioned yoga. Every few minutes, someone checked their phone. I listened, nodded, refilled plates, trying to bridge the silence between their words. "So," I said finally, "I wanted to thank you all for coming. This house is finally ours, paid off, free and clear. I thought we could celebrate together. It's something your father would have been proud of." Lena glanced around, eyes moving over the furniture, the curtains, the clock on the wall. "It's amazing you've kept this place going," she said. "It must be a lot of work maintaining something so old-fashioned." Dana laughed lightly. "It's charming, though," she added, in that tone people use when they mean the opposite. Paul shifted uncomfortably. "Come on, it's Mom's house," he said. "It's nice." I smiled, but I felt something wilt quietly inside me. "Old-fashioned," I repeated. "That's one word for it." The conversation drifted to mortgages, interest rates, and investments. Lena offered advice on modern asset management. Dana nodded along, and Paul avoided my eyes. I sat there, listening to my children talk about money as if it were love. I wondered when the two became interchangeable. After dessert, Joanne stopped by, holding a small jar of her homemade jam. "I didn't mean to intrude," she said. "Just wanted to drop this off." I waved her in. "You're not intruding, Joanne. We just finished dinner." She smiled warmly at everyone, but I could feel her taking in the tension that hung between us. Lena excused herself to take a phone call. Paul followed Henry into the living room. That left Dana, stirring her coffee, eyes wandering over the kitchen cabinets. "You should think about updating," she said. "Maybe something lighter, more open concept. It could raise the value of the place." Before I could answer, Joanne spoke. "Some homes don't need value added," she said gently. "They already have it." Dana looked surprised, unsure how to respond. Joanne turned to me. "Everything looks beautiful, Maggie. You must have worked hard to keep it this way." I smiled faintly. "It's what I know how to do." Later, after everyone left, Joanne stayed behind to help me wash dishes. The house was quiet again, save for the clinking of plates and the hum of the refrigerator. "You okay?" she asked softly. I shrugged. "They're just busy," I said. "They don't mean anything by it." She set down the dish towel and looked at me. "Maggie," she said, "your family doesn't deserve you." Her words landed heavier than I expected. I wanted to argue, to defend them, but I couldn't. Instead, I just smiled. The kind of smile that hides understanding. "Maybe not," I said, "but they're still mine." After she left, I sat alone at the table, staring at the empty plates and half-finished glasses of wine. The clock ticked louder than usual, each sound a small reminder of how silence fills space once love stops showing up. I thought of Thomas and what he'd say if he were here. Probably something simple. Don't beg for gratitude. Just keep doing right. I ran my hand over the tablecloth, tracing invisible patterns, and realized that Joanne's words didn't hurt because they were cruel. They hurt because they were true. In the weeks that followed, the air in the house seemed different. The same walls, the same ticking clock, but a stillness underneath it all. A quiet awareness I couldn't unhear after Joanne's words. "Your family doesn't deserve you." I'd smiled that night to keep from crying, but the sentence clung to me like a song you can't turn off. I began noticing things I used to explain away. Lena called less often, her messages reduced to one-line texts. "Can you transfer $200? I'll pay you back Friday." Friday never came. Paul stopped by with Henry one afternoon, but his visit felt hurried. He mentioned that his work hours were cut, that Dana's car needed repairs. I offered him leftovers and a few bills for gas, pretending it didn't sting when he took them without hesitation. Dana was the boldest. She'd call to ask if I could watch Henry, just for a few hours, and those hours would turn into entire evenings. One night, when she finally arrived close to midnight, I said gently, "You should have called. I worried." She laughed, not unkindly. "You're always worried, Margaret. It's fine." I smiled, but her words chipped something inside me. The breaking point came 2 weeks later, when I went looking for Thomas's old tool chest, a solid oak box he'd built himself. It had been sitting in the garage for years, full of his things, screws, wrenches, even the watch I'd given him on our 10th anniversary. But that morning, when I walked in, the space where it once sat was empty. I checked behind the shelves, the corners, even under the tarp where we stored gardening tools. Gone. When Paul stopped by the next day, I asked casually, "Did you move your father's chest?" "I can't find it." He hesitated, eyes darting toward the floor. "Yeah, about that. We needed some extra cash. Dana found someone online who restores old furniture. We thought since it was just sitting there." The words froze in my chest. "Just sitting there?" I repeated quietly. "Paul, that was your father's." He looked guilty. "I know, Mom. I'm sorry. We didn't think." "No," I said, cutting him off softly. "You didn't." That night, after he left, I went into the garage and stood in the empty space again. I didn't cry. I just stared, letting the realization sink in that something sacred could vanish not from malice, but from indifference. And somehow, that was worse. The next morning, I opened Thomas's old desk drawer and found his will. I hadn't looked at it in years. I unfolded the yellowed pages, reading the words as if he'd written them for this very moment. His careful handwriting listed every asset, every account, every promise he meant to keep. One line caught my eye. "Trust account established for the benefit of Margaret Rowland, held jointly at Seaside Savings." A trust account. I remembered signing something at the bank years ago, after his death, but I'd never seen any statement for it since. A quiet unease settled over me. I decided to check. At Seaside Savings, a young teller named Rebecca smiled politely as I handed over my ID and explained that I wanted to inquire about an old trust. She typed for a while, then frowned slightly. "It looks like that account was closed 2 years ago, Mrs. Rowland." "Closed?" I repeated. "By whom?" She scrolled further. "It says here it was closed by an authorized joint holder, a Miss Lena Rowland." My breath caught. "My daughter?" "Yes, ma'am. It seems she had secondary authorization. It was added sometime in 2014. Rebecca looked apologetic. "I can print the transaction history for you, if you'd like." I nodded slowly. "Yes, please." When I returned home, I laid the printout on the kitchen table. The numbers didn't lie, a series of withdrawals, small at first, then larger. The last one emptied the account completely. I sat there for a long time, tracing the ink with my finger. My daughter had taken what her father had left for me, quietly, efficiently, and without a word. That night, I didn't sleep. I thought about all the small kindnesses I'd given her, paying her student loans, helping with her down payment, the endless weekends spent babysitting Henry. I thought of how she'd laughed about my old-fashioned ways. Maybe to her, trust was just another outdated thing. The next morning, I found an empty notebook in my desk drawer and began to write. I started with the date of the first transfer I'd made, to Lena, then the night Paul sold the tool chest, then the day Dana forgot to pick up Henry. Page after page, I wrote every detail I could remember, not out of anger, but for clarity. I wanted to see, in my own handwriting, the pattern I'd been too loyal to admit. When Joanne stopped by later with scones, she found me at the table, pen in hand. "That looks serious," she said lightly. I smiled without looking up. "Just keeping track," I said. "Of what?" she asked. "Promises," I replied. She sat down across from me, studying my face. "You're not planning to—" "No," I interrupted gently. "I'm not planning to hurt anyone. I'm planning to stop being easy to forget." That night, I placed the notebook inside Thomas's old folder, beside the bank printout. Then I made tea, stood by the window, and watched the ocean beyond the street, calm, endless, and always reclaiming what was once taken from it. Joanne was the first to notice I'd stopped defending my family. She found me one afternoon pruning the rose bushes and said, "You're quieter lately, Maggie. Quieter in a different way." I smiled. "I'm thinking." A few days later, she called and asked me to come with her to the senior center downtown. Just for lunch, she promised. But when we arrived, she led me to a back table, where a woman sat with a stack of folders and a kind face. "Maggie, this is Helen Park," Joanne said. "She used to be an accountant, helps people sort through messes." Helen extended her hand. "Not everything that's messy is hopeless," she said with a calm confidence. I didn't tell her everything right away, only that I'd found an old trust account closed without my knowledge. She nodded slowly. "Do you have the documents?" I pulled them from my purse, the bank printout, the will, my notes. She adjusted her glasses, scanning each page. She murmured. "Yes, it looks like your daughter had joint authorization. Easy to add, hard to remove." Her tone was matter-of-fact, but not cold. "You can fix this," she said. "You'll just need to separate your accounts, reset your authorizations, and document every change." She tapped my notebook. "You've already started the most important part, writing things down. Paper doesn't lie." Over the next few weeks, Helen helped me take back quiet control. We met twice at her home, a tidy place filled with the faint smell of lemon polish and order. She showed me how to read my own statements, how to file requests for account security, even how to mark transactions in red for potential concern. It wasn't revenge, it was record-keeping. She once told me, "Dignity isn't silence, Maggie. It's quiet truth with documentation." Those words stayed with me. Every time I signed a form or sealed an envelope, I felt a small piece of myself return the part that had waited too long for other people to do the right thing. Joanne cheered me on from the sidelines, dropping by with coffee and laughter. "You're starting to walk taller," she teased one day. "What's your secret?" I smiled. "Confidence," I said. "It's been in storage for a while. By midsummer, my affairs were clean and current. The accounts were separate, passwords changed, my will updated to reflect what truly mattered, not who expected what." When Helen handed me the final folder, neatly labeled and secured, she said, "You're ready." "For what?" I asked. She smiled. "For whatever test comes next." I didn't realize how soon that test would arrive. By August, the quiet order I'd built started to tremble under the weight of other people's expectations. It began with a phone call from Lena. "Mom, I need a favor," she said briskly, as if we were business partners. "I'm a little short this month, and my next commission is delayed." I listened in silence, the words familiar as an old song. "How much?" I asked, already knowing the answer would hurt. 2,000, she said quickly. "Just a loan." I hesitated. "Lena, I can't this time." There was a long pause. "Can't or won't?" she asked, her voice sharper now. "Both," I said. "I've made changes to my accounts. Things are tighter now." She laughed dryly. "You've never had trouble helping before. What's changed?" I looked at the notebook on my kitchen table, open to a fresh page. "Me," I said simply. When I hung up, my hands trembled a little. Not from guilt, but from unfamiliar strength. A few days later, Paul stopped by. His tone was gentler, but his visit had the same shadow. "Dana and I could use some help covering the mortgage," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "Just for a couple months." "Paul," I said, "I've helped you both more than once. Maybe it's time to find a different solution." He frowned. "We're family, Mom." "Exactly," I said quietly. "And family shouldn't mistake kindness for obligation." He looked away, ashamed but frustrated. "Dana says you've been distant lately. She's worried." "Tell Dana I'm fine," I said, just learning where to put my energy. For the first time, my boundaries had weight, and people noticed. By mid-September, Dana had stopped calling altogether. When she finally did, it wasn't for Henry, it was for my car. "Just for a few weeks," she said sweetly. "We'd keep it safe." "I'm using it," I replied. "You have another one." She sighed, the sound of disappointment disguised as manners. "We thought you'd want to help." I smiled into the phone. "I did. For years." Then I hung up. The following week, Lena drove down unannounced. She walked through the door without knocking, her perfume filling the air before her words did. "You're being unreasonable," she said. "I told Paul this new attitude isn't you." "Maybe it's always been me," I said. "You just weren't looking." She paced the kitchen, glancing at the documents neatly stacked on the counter. "What's all this?" "My affairs," I said evenly. "I've organized everything." "For what?" she demanded. "You act like you don't trust your own children." I met her eyes. "Trust isn't the problem. Entitlement is." She opened her mouth, then closed it again, realizing she couldn't win a calm argument. "You're making a mistake," she said finally. "We're family." "I know," I replied. "That's why I'm choosing peace before resentment." That night, I wrote the conversation down in my notebook, every word, every tone. When I reached the end of the page, I added a date and a single line beneath it. "Boundaries are not betrayal." Days passed in relative quiet. I started volunteering again at the library, shelving returned books, breathing in their paper and ink steadiness. Joanne stopped by often, proud of me but concerned. "They're not going to let this go, Maggie," she said. "You know that, right?" "I know," I said, "but neither will I." Her eyes softened. "Just don't let them turn your peace into punishment." But the pressure built anyway. Small things at first, Lena's cold texts, Dana's silence, Paul's strained visits. Then, one crisp October morning, a letter arrived from the bank confirming my updated beneficiaries. My late husband's name removed, replaced by Pierce Community Literacy Fund. The local library I'd served for 3 decades would now carry the trust forward in my stead. That evening, I tucked the letter into my folder and poured myself a glass of wine. I should have felt lonely, but I didn't. I felt steady the way the ocean feels before a storm. A week later, Lena called again. "Mom," I heard from Paul, she began. "You changed your accounts. Is that true?" "Yes," I said. "Why?" "Because I wanted to make sure what your father built helps people who appreciate it." Her voice cracked, not with sadness but disbelief. "You're cutting us out?" "I'm reminding you what legacy means," I said gently. "It's not about money, it's about respect." She exhaled sharply. "You're unbelievable." "Maybe," I said, "but I finally believe in myself." The next morning, Joanne found me on the porch, sipping tea. "You look lighter," she said. "What did you do?" "Rearranged my life," I said with a faint smile. "Filed a few things under peace." But I could already feel it. The gathering tension in the air, like the pull of a tide before it breaks. Lena's pride wouldn't let the matter rest, and I knew that sooner or later they would come, together, demanding an explanation. And when they did, I would be ready. It was a Saturday in late October when they came, all 3 of them, arriving together like an unexpected storm. I saw Paul's car pull into the driveway first, then Lena's white sedan behind it. Dana climbed out with her arms crossed, her expression already tight. Through the front window, I could see their mouths moving before they even reached the porch. I opened the door before they could knock. "You might as well come in," I said. "It's cold out." The air shifted as soon as they stepped inside. Lena stood tall, coat still buttoned, while Paul lingered behind her, his eyes uncertain. Dana set her purse down with a thud. "We need to talk," Lena said. "I assumed so," I replied, motioning toward the living room. "Go ahead." Saturday. I folded my hands on my lap, calm as still water. They fidgeted like people holding secrets too long. Lena spoke first. "Paul told me you changed your accounts. You moved the trust. You didn't discuss it with us." "No," I said. "I didn't." "Why not?" she demanded. "We're your family." "I'm aware," I said quietly. "That's exactly why I needed to." Her jaw tightened. "You can't just decide things like this, Mom. You're not thinking clearly." "That money wasn't yours," I interrupted gently. The room went silent. Even the old clock on the mantel seemed to pause. Dana cleared her throat. "We're not asking for everything," she said carefully. "Just fairness." "Fairness?" I repeated, rising slowly to my feet. "Do you know how many times I've heard that word from you 3? Fairness was when I helped with Lena's tuition, when I paid Paul's medical bills, when I watched Henry for weeks without a thank you. Fairness was every quiet dinner where I let disrespect slide because I told myself you were tired." Lena crossed her arms. "You're twisting things." "No," I said. "I'm remembering them." I walked to the cabinet, opened the drawer, and took out a thick folder, the one Helen had helped me organize. I placed it on the coffee table, the sound sharp and final. "This is every check I've written to you, every bill I've covered, every promise you forgot you made. And this," I opened another envelope, sliding out the bank printout. Is proof of the trust your father built. Closed without my knowledge. Signed by you, Lena. Her eyes widened. That's not forgery? I said calmly. No. Authorization. Legal, yes. Moral, no. Paul put his face in his hands. Lena, you didn't. She stood abruptly. I had access, okay? You told me to handle paperwork after Dad died. I didn't think. That's the problem, I said. You never did. For a moment, no one spoke. The sound of wind pressed faintly against the windows. Dana finally said, Maggie, please, let's not do this. We're all family here. Family doesn't mean blind loyalty, I replied. It means accountability. Lena sank back onto the couch, her confidence cracking. You're really giving it all away. To strangers? Not strangers, I said. Readers, children, people who'll grow with the words your father and I believed in. Paul lifted his head, eyes wet. Mom, we didn't mean to hurt you. We needed help. I know, I said softly. But help isn't the same as taking. He looked at the folder, then at me. I sold Dad's tool chest, he whispered. Dana told me it didn't matter, but it did. I shouldn't have. I nodded. I know, Paul. I forgave you before you asked. But forgiveness doesn't erase the lesson. Lena exhaled sharply, her voice trembling with frustration. You're making yourself the victim here, when all we wanted was to feel included. I leaned forward, my voice quiet but steady. Inclusion isn't ownership, Lena, and respect isn't given to the loudest person in the room. It's earned, through gratitude, through truth. I gave you both everything I had, and you took it like air, invisible, until it's gone. For the first time, no one argued. The fight drained out of them, replaced by the weight of realization. I'm not angry, I said finally. I'm just finished explaining why my boundaries exist. I'm done pretending that love means giving until you're empty. Paul reached for my hand, his voice low. I understand, Mom. Dana touched his shoulder, silent, regret softening her face. Lena stood again, but this time slower. Her eyes darted to the documents, then to me. I guess I was wrong about you, she said quietly. I met her gaze. No, sweetheart, I said. You were wrong about yourself. She left without another word. The door closed softly behind her, leaving only the sound of the clock again, steady, certain, alive. Paul and Dana lingered a moment longer. What happens now? He asked. Now? I said. We start telling the truth, even if it's late. When they finally left, I gathered the papers back into their folder, smoothing each page with care. There was no triumph in it, only peace, the kind that comes when you stop trying to prove your worth to people who were supposed to see it all along. I poured a cup of tea and sat by the window. The ocean beyond Ashbury Street was calm again, as if the tide had gone out and left the shore clean. For the first time in years, I felt light. The house felt different after that night, not emptier, but clearer, like a room that had finally been aired out after years of stale breath. The next morning, sunlight poured through the lace curtains, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't rush to fill the quiet. I let it stay. Paul called that afternoon. His voice was soft, cautious. Mom, I wanted to say thank you for not yelling, for listening. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. I've done enough yelling in my head, I said. Listening seems to work better now. He exhaled. Dana feels terrible. She said we took advantage. You did, I said gently, but not out of cruelty. You just forgot where generosity ends. A few days later, Dana stopped by with Henry. She carried a small plant in her hands, a peace lily, still in its store pot. We thought this might look nice in your kitchen, she said quietly. I know it's small, but I wanted to bring something back. I took it, feeling its damp soil beneath my fingertips. It's perfect, I said. Peace always fits. While Henry played with his toy trains, Dana lingered at the counter, watching me make tea. I never understood you, she admitted. You always seemed calm, even when you should have been angry. I smiled faintly. Calm isn't the same as peace. It's just what you hold until peace arrives. She nodded, eyes damp. I see that now. The following week, a letter arrived from Lena, no apology, just a few measured lines written in her elegant handwriting. Mom, I've been thinking about what you said. I didn't handle things right. I won't pretend I understand your choices, but I respect them. I hope we can talk when things settle. It wasn't affection, but it was acknowledgement, and that was enough. I placed the letter in the same folder as the bank papers. A small reminder that even difficult children can grow if you stop watering their excuses. With the tension behind me, I found new ways to fill my days. I volunteered twice a week at the library again, cataloging donations and helping children choose books. The director, a young woman named Elise, often asked for advice. "How do you stay so patient?" she asked one day. I smiled, by learning when not to expect thanks. In late November, I met Helen and Joanne at the cafe near the harbor. We sat by the window, watching the water move in slow silver ripples. Helen stirred her coffee. "How's the family?" she asked. "Less loud," I said. "And more thoughtful, I think," Joanne chuckled. "That's progress." Helen leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Have you decided what to do with the trust money yet?" I nodded. "It's already in motion. The library's starting a literacy scholarship in Thomas's name. It'll help adult learners get their GEDs. Joanne's eyes softened. "He'd love that." "I think so," I said quietly. He always believed knowledge should be free, but dignity earned. They raised their cups, and for a moment, I imagined Thomas sitting there too, his weathered hand wrapped around his coffee, that half smile on his face, proud, quiet, content. The next few months passed in a rhythm that felt like healing. Paul began stopping by with groceries instead of requests. Sometimes he fixed things a loose hinge, a leaky tap, and left without taking money. Dana invited me to Henry's school play, saving me a front row seat. Lena called on Christmas morning for the first time in years, her voice soft but unsure. "Merry Christmas, Mom." "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," I said, letting forgiveness live quietly between us. In January, I hosted a small gathering for my neighbors, just coffee, cake, and laughter. Joanne brought her famous blueberry muffins. Helen came too, holding a file of the scholarship paperwork for me to sign. As we sat around the table, I realized something simple but profound. Peace doesn't come when others apologize. It comes when you stop needing them to. Before they left, Joanne squeezed my hand. "You look lighter," she said, "like someone who finally believes her own worth." I laughed softly. "Maybe I finally do." That evening, as I watered the peace lily Dana had brought, I caught my reflection in the window, older, yes, but steadier. I thought about the years I'd spent giving, forgiving, waiting for gratitude that never came. Now, I understood what Joanne had meant that night when she said my family didn't deserve me. It wasn't an insult, it was an observation. Some people need time to grow into deserving love that's already been given. I wasn't bitter anymore. I was simply free. 3 months later, spring arrived with the kind of gentleness that feels like forgiveness. The magnolia tree outside my window bloomed early, its pink petals scattering across the porch like little notes from the earth, saying, "You made it." Life had found its rhythm again, slow mornings, quiet afternoons, and evenings spent watching the light fade over the ocean. One bright Saturday, the library hosted the dedication for the Thomas Rowland Literacy Fund. The reading room smelled of old paper and lemon oil, and the new plaque gleamed on the wall, "For those who give quietly and love without condition." I stood beside Helen and Joanne as the director gave a short speech about generosity and legacy. When she finished, she handed me a small card. Inside was a simple handwritten message. "Your kindness will keep turning pages long after you're gone." After the ceremony, Paul and Dana arrived with Henry. He ran up to me, waving a little paper star he'd made in arts and crafts. "It's for Grandpa," he said proudly, "so he can read in heaven." My throat tightened. "He'd love that, sweetheart." Dana smiled shyly. "He talks about him all the time now. About you, too." Paul nodded. "We're proud of you, Mom." A few minutes later, I saw Lena standing near the door, hesitant, hands clasped around a small bouquet of daisies. When our eyes met, she gave a tentative smile. I walked toward her, and without a word, she handed me the flowers. "You were right," she said quietly, "about everything I didn't want to hear." I touched her arm gently. "That's how wisdom works, Lena. It waits until we're ready to listen." We stood there in silence for a moment, two women connected not by perfection, but by time, the truest teacher of all. That night, back home, I placed the daisies in a vase beside the peace lily on my kitchen table. The two plants stood side by side, one blooming, one steady a picture of grace and endurance. Outside, the sea moved softly against the shore, steady as breath. I took a sip of tea, looked around the quiet house Thomas built, and smiled. "Thanks for listening," I whispered, half to him, half to the air. "Share your story in the comments. Your voice matters."